3 murders would take place in a very quiet and peaceful neighborhood. Eventually, a suspect would be found, arrested, and go to prison. But did they get the right person? Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of the Pembroke murders. Viewer discretion is advised. Calvin and Pamela Phillips lived here in this beautiful home in Pembroke, Kentucky. This is also the home where they would raise their son, Matt. Pembroke is this super small town in Kentucky. It has 700, 800 people living in it. It's definitely a place with true small town vibes. And it's just full of cornfields. It's a really quiet, very peaceful area. It's a great little place to raise a family without, the busy city life, taking over. People felt safe in this community, even to a point where they actually forgot to lock their doors half the time. Pamela Phillips, she worked as a VP at a local bank, and then Calvin, who would go by Cal Phillips, he was retired Army. In fact, they lived just a few short miles away from Fort Campbell. But everyone in this community knew everyone. Everyone got along. Pam and Cal were beloved members of the community, and no one could ever say a single bad thing against them. By 2015, their son Matt is a full-grown adult out there in the world on his own, living on his own. And that's around the time when Pam and Cal decide they're going to do some work on the house, do some remodeling and fixing the place up. So Matt, basically as an anniversary gift for them, because their anniversary was coming up, he bought them a new washing machine. That washing machine was expected to be delivered on November 18th, 2015. Matt was in communication with his parents about this, and Cal knew exactly when the delivery was coming. He was home all day. He said, yep, I'll be here for it. Don't worry about it. But in the late morning time on November 18th, Pam gets a call at work, and it's from the delivery company. They said they went to the house, a few hours ago, but no one answered the door. We tried, but no one responded, so we had to leave, which was just super weird to Pam. And so Pam, throughout the day, while she was working, kept trying to call home, but Cal never answered the phone. That same morning or early afternoon, a family friend of the Phillips would run by the Phillips house because she was going to just, sit down and have a coffee or whatever with Cal. When she got to the house, their front door was open, which she thought was super strange because they never left their door open. She calls out for Cal's name. She gets no response. She kind of walks around the perimeter of the house. She thinks maybe he's outside working. She can't find him, so she goes, he's out there somewhere. I'll come back later, and then she just leaves. And when she gets home, she calls the Phillips house and leaves a voicemail on their answering machine. So later that evening, sometime around 5-ish, Pam leaves from work, from the bank. She gets home within about 20 minutes or so. When she gets in, she sees there's a message on the answering machine, so she just clicks the button, and she hears the friend who said, I was there earlier, blah, blah, blah. And so she calls the friend back. The friend relays the story to her again, saying the door was open, I couldn't see Cal anywhere. And Pam was like, oh, that's really weird. But then all of a sudden, Pam kind of stops her friend from talking because she says, wait a minute, I think I just heard something. And then there was an eerie silence for a few seconds. And then the friend says she heard a loud whimpering or a screech type sound. And then nothing. Pamela never got back on the phone. So the friend, along with the friend's daughter, goes back to the Phillips house later that evening. When they drive up, they see Pam's car parked in front of the house, everything is normal. They go to the house. They're they knock on the door. They don't get any response. The friend says she opens the door, begins to walk in, but she said at that point she just felt something was off. Something was strange. Something was potentially wrong, but she wasn't sure what it was. So she just kind of closed the door and left. They did not call police at that time, and I don't know why. Ultimately, it would not have mattered if they did or not. The following morning, Police get a phone call that there is a smoldering car on the side of the road, a car that looked like it had been burnt maybe overnight and the fire was just dying out. So when they get there, the authorities, they confirm there is a burnt out vehicle on the side of the road. When they approach it, it smells very heavily of gasoline. It was as if someone doused this car in gasoline and lit it on fire. So they quickly determined that this was definitely an arson. At first glance, they don't see anything in the car. But when they look closer, they make a horrific discovery. They see 2 human skulls in this vehicle. And then later they kind of find the other skeletal remains of 2 different people. They noticed that the license plate on the back of the car did not burn, and so they were able to look it up, and they discovered who the owner of this vehicle was. It was Pamela Phillips. So at this point, they kind of rush to the Phillips home because they want to know what's going on. I mean, there's 2 deceased bodies in here. What's the situation? As they're processing that scene, they're having people go to the Phillips home. When they get there, they see like a pool of blood kind of like on the front lawn. So eventually they're able to get access to the house after getting a warrant because of everything, because no one's responding. When they knock on the door, no one's responding to phone calls. With the blood and now with the bodies in the car, they have every right to go into that house to make sure everything is okay. So they search the home and it's cluttered because of like the remodel, but nothing appears to be stolen per se. I mean, there's still valuables left out that weren't taken, that were in plain sight. And everything in the house seems normal at first glance. And then they get to the back porch where they notice there is a cutout of like maybe a door. And they realize this is like a cellar door. So they open it and there's a staircase leading down, into their basement. And so when they begin to walk down, at the bottom of that staircase, they see a body. And that body would be identified later on as Cal Phillips. It will be determined that Cal was shot 5 times. He also appeared to be severely beaten in his face. He was lying on the top of some logs that looked like someone had tried to set those logs on fire, and they caught fire, but I guess they said when the person left and closed the cellar door, it created an environment where it put the fire out. So the fire never really took off. So, police are also investigating the outside of the home, and kind of in this grassy patch that's more on another neighbor's lawn, they see a handgun and they see a cell phone. These items are on basically the lawn of the neighbor whose name is Edward Dansereau. He would go by Ed. As they approach Ed's house, they see that his back door is kind of cracked open. Which is something he never really did. As they go into the house, they're searching for anything they could find, and they see signs there's a TV on. There's a fully prepared meal ready to be eaten, a beer can that looks like it had just been opened, or no one had no one had drank from it yet. And then on the chair Ed normally sat on, there is a holster, a gun holster, but no gun. They quickly realized that the cell phone they found outside was Ed's cell phone, and the holster belonged to the gun they found outside. What it appeared to look like was that Ed maybe heard something happening, maybe across the street or across the yard at the Phillips home. He may have rushed out with his gun and everything and a cell phone, and then he may have been accosted by someone who saw him kind of trying to intervene. And so Ed may have been a victim of something. By 2015, Ed Dansereau was dating a wonderful woman who they had met back in 2002. He had already been divorced for several years prior to that. She was a widow. She had kids that he doted upon, he loved dearly. His girlfriend described Ed as just this wonderful gem of a person. And they were madly in love with each other. Ed was an excellent pianist for a band, a local band. He was also known to be really good in the kitchen. He was a pretty awesome cook, and he was very proud of the meals he made. Ed and Cal, they had become quick friends. They bonded over music because Cal loved to play guitar. And so they were just, they just became very neighborly and became very friendly. But where is Ed? Because we have his stuff, we see something that may have happened, but where is he? Well, we do have those two bodies in the car, and we're still missing Pam, and now we're missing Ed. So after doing some forensics with DNA and all that, they do eventually identify the two skeletal remains in the car as Pamela Phillips and Edward Dansereau. Both of them had also been shot. They determined that the two of them were shot with a .22 caliber weapon, and that Cal had been shot with a .45 caliber weapon. These are three very unassuming, very quiet, very peaceful people, just sort of living their lives, never causing any trouble. These are the last three people in this neighborhood that you would ever think this could possibly happen to, but it did. And so it really begged the question, why? How? Who? With it being a small community, rumors started to run rampant, and there was like, oh, Pamela and Ed were having this secret affair, and maybe Cal found out, and so they tried to kill Cal. But then how were they both shot multiple times and then set on fire in the car? Didn't make any sense. And same thing vice versa. You know, Cal was shot multiple times and beaten in the face. So this whole like, oh, there's an affair going on, it didn't make any sense. And they looked into it, they investigated it, they found absolutely no evidence of any affairs between Pam and Ed. These are just three very wholesome people. So they couldn't find any dirt on any of them. Back at the house, police using luminol do discover that there is some cleaned up blood stains over by where the phone was, where Pam likely was on that phone call with a friend when she heard the screech or the scream. And so they found there was blood there that someone had cleaned up. They also found like clumps of hair in some blood that wasn't cleaned up, and that hair that did belong to Pam. So now they know that Pam was likely shot and killed in the house. With that pool of blood they found in the lawn outside, it's possible they think that Ed may have been accosted as he was trying to help, just being a good Samaritan and a good neighbor, and whoever did this probably killed them there on the lawn. And then a friend who was helping clean the house after police said they were done investigating the house, well, a friend found a spent .22 caliber bullet there in the house. And that ammunition was the same exact ammunition that was found inside the bodies of both Ed and Pam. So this again will show that Pam was killed by the .22, likely in the house. And then Cal's sister, as they're cleaning the house, she's like cleaning up shelves, and she reaches up and she sees this white string hanging from a high shelf, and when she pulls it down, she sees it's dog tags. Why would Cal have his dog tags up on this high shelf just randomly? Well, it turns out they weren't his. They had a different name on them. The name was Kit Martin. Who was Kit Martin then? Well, he was another neighbor to the Phillips. It was actually Christian Martin, and his nickname was Kit. Christian Kit Martin was a Army major. He had served 2 tours in Iraq as a helicopter pilot, and he was currently based down at Fort Campbell, which is right down the road. He had moved into this like yellow house that was basically across from the Phillips, and he had moved in years prior with his wife Joan, and Joan had her own children from a different marriage. Kit, as he would go by to everyone, was seen as a super friendly, very, peaceful, chill dude, a good guy. On the outside, it looked like his marriage to Joan was really good, but they became very neighborly, and they would have like dinner at each other's homes, and they bonded just as much like they did with Ed. But behind closed doors, Kit and Joan did not have such a great relationship. It was rocky. It was bad. They would argue a lot. Joan claims that Kit, was violent with her. She even has filed police reports and called 911 to report domestic abuse. But I guess police investigating it can never actually find any actual evidence of abuse. Like, she didn't have any bruises or anything on her or anything of that nature. Not saying she was lying, it's just they didn't have any actual evidence of it. But Kit, at that point, says, I want to get divorced. So he starts the divorce proceedings. This was a messy divorce process. It was bad, and eventually it ended not only in divorce, but it ended with both of them getting restraining orders against each other. The interesting thing is that Pam and Cal seemed to take to Joan well, and they actually ended up helping Joan during all of this. So they would help get Joan's kids to and from school, and they actually helped Joan get a rental property so she had somewhere to live. And then one day, Joan went to Cal and said, "Hey, Cal, can you please help me go into my old house, the yellow house here, to get some of my belongings because Kit's gone right now, so this is the best time to do it." Cal, being the helpful, caring person he was, says, "Yeah, okay, we'll go over there. I'll help you out." While they're in the house, Joan claims she finds a box. I say claims because no one saw her find the box. But in that box, there is a laptop and there are several CDs, these discs, and they all are labeled secret or classified or top secret. Now, Cal was a logistics officer in the Army for a very long time, and he knew very well that these were classified documents that even Kit, who is a major, he's not allowed to have. You can't do that. Classified documents that you're not allowed to have seems relevant these days. So, Cal, being the stand-up person that he was, he says, "I'm going to take these, I'm going to give them to the proper authorities." So he hands them over to the FBI, who then hands them over to the Army. So they do their investigation, and they end up court-martialing Kit. While they're interviewing Cal, with regards to how they came to find these, discs and laptop, Cal also brings up a situation or a story that he heard from Joan. I guess he saw a photo that Joan showed him, a photo of her 16-year-old son's back, and there was a bunch of bruises on her son's back. She told Cal that Kit had beat the crap out of her 16-year-old son. She told him that. I mean, that's all he ever knew. So he presented that information to the investigators, and so they added that into, this whole proceeding. I guess eventually Joan gave them this photo. Kit said he never hit any of her kids. He never once did it. He also denied, taking these documents, saying he doesn't know how they got into his house, but he didn't do it. But he was I guess also caught in lies with regards to this investigation, and so they filed charges. This would not only potentially land him in prison, he would lose his career. He would lose his rank, he would lose everything. So all of this happens in 2012. For whatever reasons, the trial for this portion of this keeps getting pushed back, and finally, they have a date set. December of 2015. Well, the murders occurred on November 18th, 2015, just a few short weeks before the court-martial. So, they have the dog tags, which potentially puts Kit in the house during the murders. He's also their neighbor, who's been to their house several times. It doesn't necessarily mean he committed the murder and put his dog tags there, which doesn't make sense. But at any rate, the police get a warrant to be able to search Kit's house. And there they collect several guns. They collect a locked safe, which they would later find a .45 caliber pistol inside. And then they also collect his surveillance camera stuff, because he has cameras around his house. Kit says he has absolutely nothing to do with the murders. He said the surveillance camera will even show he had nothing to do with it. And there is video, here's an image of him pulling into the back of his house at about 5:14 p.m. on the day of the murders. Now, this is literally moments or so before Pam was likely shot and killed in her home. But then they find another image at about 8:23 p.m. where it shows him on his back porch with his dog. He's dressed just very casually in pajamas. He's walking around very calmly, like nothing. And this is only like a couple of hours after the murders would have taken place. This is during a time where the killer would likely need to be at the house doing a bunch of cleanup, because he also has to stage now 3 bodies, put 2 bodies into a car, drive the car to where it was eventually found. It's a lot of work. And so for him just to be seen on camera casually walking around his own house, it seems like, he has an alibi. And so his girlfriend even says, yeah, he was here the entire night. And she swears up and down that he was at home that whole night. But police think that Kit has a genuine motive because Cal was going to be the primary witness at this court-martial. And so there's like this vengeful reason to kill him. But would killing Cal have actually prevented the court-martial? We'll find out later. But they said that Cal was the likely primary target and that probably Pam and Ed were just victims of wrong place, wrong time. But Kit, he says, I didn't even steal those documents. Like he's trying to reassure them, like, I did not steal that laptop and those discs. He's saying that Joan did, that Joan stole that stuff, held on to it until the opportune moment to then plant them in his home. Again, when Cal was with Joan in the house, no one saw Joan find this box. And so no one truly knows if she found it just by chance or if she maybe had put something there. No one knows. Kit said that Joan is a very malicious, very vengeful person. That's what he describes her as. And that she hated him. And that, of course, she would do this to get back at him. She would gladly watch him lose his career and go to jail because, she's bitter. Yeah, he thinks that Joan is basically framing her. Now, before the murders take place, Kit had hired a private investigator to look into Joan. This was with regards to her having involvement in the classified documents thing. So Joan had claimed that she had several exes who were extremely violent against her, that they beat her, but the PI found absolutely no evidence of her even calling 911 with regards to other exes. There's no court documents, there's no restraining orders other than the ones that were for her and Kit, but there was no physical trace of her ever being abused by any of her exes. She also claimed that the father of one of her kids had died in some crazy accident, and she told her kid that. But then the PI found out that the dad was actually alive and well, and that Joan was lying about the whole thing. She also found out that Joan was a bigamist. She had married a man, and then she had married Kit while still being married to another person. So she had to go through all sorts of hoops and lies in order to even make that happen. So when Kit found that out, that was enough to press charges against Joan for bigamy. She would end up pleading guilty to these bigamy-related charges. This was just a couple of weeks before the triple homicide. The PI also, as they were investigating, came across these rumblings that Joan and Cal were having an affair. Joan denied ever having an affair with Cal. Cal was asked, I guess there's audio recordings that this PI did with him, and he never outright said, no, I did not have an affair with her, but he also never admitted to doing it. It didn't really sound, though, that there was an actual affair. It sounded more like it was just rumors around town. Small town. But it sounded like Cal was going to be Joan's next, victim of manipulation. She was already spinning the wheels to manipulate Cal for her to get what she wanted. She was very good at it. Once Cal kind of caught wind of all of this manipulation that Joan had done and all these lies that Joan had said, Kit thinks that Cal was beginning to sway his thoughts on the classified documents. This is just his opinion. He has no proof of this, but Kit thinks that Cal was going to testify in favor of Kit now. Again, not a substantiated claim. That's what he thinks. And then he thinks that would have pissed off Joan. Could be a motive for murder for Joan. Sorry, I know I'm jumping around, by the way, time frames, but there's just a lot of information with this case, so it's a lot of back and forth. But let's fast forward now back to a month after the murders, Joan and a couple other people are seen walking into a cell phone store. They're caught on CCTV. Joan presents a cell phone that she brought in to the customer service person and says, "I found this phone on my front lawn and I want to know if I could sell it," basically. So the cell phone employee, he looks up that phone's information. Who does it belong to? Pamela Phillips. She said she found that cell phone on her front lawn, which was not the lawn of the neighbor across the street anymore because Joan had moved to another place. How would that have happened? How on earth do you have possession of a murder victim's phone a month after the murders that you said you found on your front lawn? How? So there's like an alert on this account so that they have to tell police if the cell phone's ever reported. So they call police with Joan still there, and Joan is then seen bolting out of the store, and she never comes back in. 5 months after the murders, Pam and Cal's family are kind of cleaning up around the house, and they're reorganizing things. And on the back porch, which was just a few feet away from that little door that opened to the basement where Cal was found dead, they found a .45 caliber shell casing. Why police didn't find that during their initial search, no idea. But it's a big house, it's a lot of clutter, things can be missed. But they apparently didn't see this bullet. And so they handed that bullet over to police. They found a .45 caliber pistol in Kit's safe. And it's a locked safe, but they were able to open it, and they found that .45 caliber. That .45 caliber gun was a confirmed match to the .45 caliber that was found to have killed Cal. So they confirmed that .45 caliber gun was the murder weapon, and that murder weapon was locked in a safe in Kit's home. But how was that .45 caliber bullet missed? Well, Kit thinks it was planted there. It's not totally out of question. Just like the dog tags were found there after the fact. It's kind of weird. As this murder investigation is ongoing, the court-martial for Kit Martin continues on, and he actually goes to this trial. He's found guilty, and he is convicted of mishandling of classified information, as well as found guilty of basically assaulting a 16-year-old child. He is sentenced to about 3 months in prison, but he lost his entire career. He lost his rankings. He lost his pension. Basically dishonorably discharged from the military. He picks up, he moves on. He moves to North Carolina, where he is able to get a job as an airline pilot. And that's what he just does for a while. He has himself a girlfriend that they share a home together now. She says he's a great guy. He's never been violent. He's not this guy who would kill 3 people. That's just based on, how her interactions with him have gone. But all this time, there's no arrests made. There's no suspects named officially in this triple homicide until suddenly, on May 11th, 2019, at the Louisville International Airport, Kit Martin is about to board a plane that he is going to be flying because he's the pilot. But just before he does, the police arrest him. He's still decked out in his pilot uniform. And they arrest him then, and they charge him with 3 counts of homicide. What finally pushed them to do it? No one really knows, because nothing new had come out. It just seemed like they just figured, we got no one else. We have evidence that points to Kit. Let's just arrest him. His trial would commence in 2021. Again, prosecutors argue that Kit's motive to kill Cal was the court-martial, with Cal being a primary witness. But I think Kit would even know that even without Cal, the trial was still going to go on, and that he was likely going to be found guilty because the items were in his possession. Whether they were planted or not, he had to know that even with or without Cal, it was not going to go his way. So it's a weird motive, and it's so out there, it's so obvious that he would do it, that he would kill Cal. It's too obvious. And then what about the dog tags? Well, there's another interesting thing about that. Kit says they weren't his official dog tags because the dog tags found in the Phillips home said Kit Martin, but that's not even his actual name. That's a nickname. His dog tags actually say Christian Martin, and they don't use a white string to attach dog tags. They don't do that, but these ones were found with white string. I don't know if they ever presented his actual dog tags or not. I can't seem to find that. So Kit, in his defense, would say that had to have been planted. They were fake. They were made by maybe Joan, and they're planted there after the fact, somehow, some way. Just the same way that .45 caliber that they are saying was planted there after the fact to just make Kit look more guilty. Because again, there's no reason why, even if those were his dog tags for real, why would he bring them? He wasn't wearing them. Why would he grab them, bring them to the house, put them on a high shelf? That makes absolutely no sense. That's just basically saying, "Hi, I did it." Someone said he might as well have just written Kit was here or Kit killed them. It's the same thing. Why would he do that? It's the stupidest thing. Okay, what about the alibi? Well, Kit claims that the reason why they always used the back entrance to the house was because their front door was totally busted. And so because of that, they nailed that door shut so no one can even use it. So the only way out of the house is that back door with the camera. The camera never sees him leaving that back door at all, that entire night, to do any kind of cleanup, or even the morning, the next day, nothing. He's always there. The prosecution argued, that door wasn't nailed shut. I don't know if they proved that or not, but they said it wasn't nailed shut. They also found proof on Kit's cell phone that he set a timer for 1:10 a.m. for November 19th. They think in order for him to wake up and go over to the house to clean up the crime scene while everyone else in the house is sleeping and unsuspecting. And so he still kind of has his alibi and then sneaks out through the front door, maybe a window. But they have proof that he did not leave the house through that back door, and they have the proof that he never left on that other camera they have pointing towards where he parked his car. They never see him leaving that way either. So they actually can't verify or prove that he left the house. The prosecution provided a witness that said just a few days prior to that burned out car being found, this witness saw Christian Kit Martin at that location appearing to scope it out, possibly planning where he was going to drop the car. So they were able, like I said, to match the .45 caliber bullets to Kit's gun to prove that gun killed Cal. The .22 caliber ammunition, however, they could not definitively match to any of his other guns. They said he owned guns that could have fired those .22, but they were not able to forensically link it to any of his guns. So they could not prove that any of his guns killed Pam or Ed. Other than that .45 caliber, all the other evidence is circumstantial, crazy circumstantial. The defense argued everything was planted. It's reasonable. It's not out of the norm. It could happen. Joan could have done that very easily. But they don't have any proof that she planted that evidence. Police also claim that they have been able to clear her from having any involvement in the murders. I don't know in how they did that or what capacity they did it, but they said that she's been cleared. What would even be the motive for Joan to do it? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to kill the person that would have been helping put Kit away. It doesn't make sense. Maybe she did think that Cal was going to flip, and so she wanted to silence him. Maybe she wanted to put Kit away forever, and so she figured, how about I kill the person who's going to be testifying against him, put it all on Kit, so now he's in prison forever, because that's how vindictive, she maybe is. Possible. Can't confirm it. It's alleged. Kit took the stand in his own defense, and he swore up and down he had no involvement in the murder of these three individuals. But the jury did not buy it. The jury would find him guilty on all 3 counts of murder, arson, attempted arson, burglary, and other charges. Christian Kit Martin was then sentenced to 4 life sentences without the possibility of parole. But did he do it? Did he do it? You all know by now, I am someone who needs someone to be proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm sorry, there's just way too much reasonable doubt in this case. There is so much that you could put the same evidence against Kit, you can put that on another person, like Joan. You can reasonably deduce that he may have been framed, that evidence was planted. Because all this stuff is being found conveniently months after the murders took place. Why didn't police find it initially during their sweep of the house? They searched the house for a few days, and it took family and friends to find all these convenient pieces. It doesn't make sense that Kit would want to kill Cal. Just he would know that with or without Cal, the court-martial would still go on and he would likely still be found guilty. Cal was a primary witness, but he wasn't like a deal or no deal kind of witness. Like, if he doesn't testify, he ain't going to prison. I just don't get the motive. I don't understand it. Joan had access to Kit's things. I mean, she could obviously get into the house when he wasn't there. She probably had access to his safe. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's just so much doubt. There's too much. If I was in the jury, I couldn't say, yeah, no, he's guilty. I couldn't do it. Do I think there's a good chance he could be guilty? Yeah. Do I think there's a good chance Joan could be guilty? Yeah. And that's the problem. The fact that you can reasonably say someone else also could have done this with the same evidence, that's reasonable doubt. In my opinion, the prosecution did not prove its case completely. But I'm not a prosecutor. I'm not a defense attorney. I'm not in a jury. I'm just a guy telling these stories. I am not sure that Kit Martin killed these three people. I am not sure. I cannot sit here and say, yep, he did it. Can't do it. He could have. I just can't say it for sure. What do you guys think? Curious to see if y'all think he's guilty or not. Or maybe if Joan is guilty or not. Or could this have been a random person? Could have been a total like random burglary gone completely horribly wrong. The timing and the doesn't make sense for that. It does seem like this is more of like a personal thing. But I don't know. So I don't know. But that's where we're at. That's where we're at. Kit Martin is in prison for the rest of his life for murders that he may have committed? Question mark? And that doesn't seem very fair to me. But that is it for this case, True Crime-a-roonies. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, if you have tripped, fallen, and stumbled your way into this video, hello, I'm Mike. I tell true crime stories here on TikTok as well, and YouTube as well. I'm a dumb. My TikTok is listed in the description in the link tree below, so please follow me there, subscribe to me here. If there's a case you want me to cover, please email me. Email's listed below in the description. Just email the name of the person, where it happened, when it happened, and I will add that case to my list. I will cover it eventually, I just can't tell you when. I pick my cases at random. Next, if you want to support me in any way, we do sell merch, also in the link tree below, t-shirts, hoodies, stuff like that. We do ship internationally, gross. So yeah, feel free to do that. And then if you have a Discord account and you want to join my Discord server, that's also linked below. Be over the age of 18 or else you'll be kicked out of there. Yeah, sayonara, suckers. But that is it for this video, True Crime-a-rooney dooney ding dongs. So, I will see you all for the next video, which will be, this is a Robert De Niro, what am I doing? Looking at me? With my Robert De Niro face. Yeah? Hey, I'll see you for the next video, huh? You fucker. That hurts, doing the Robert De Niro face, really hurts. What am I doing? I don't know. Bye.